I'd like to welcome Dave McMullen, our city assessor, to our show. And Dave, I've been asking all the department heads when they come on, our leaders, tell us a little bit about yourself. Sometimes people in the public don't realize, your background and what you're about.
Oh, sure. Maybe like most of us that do at least my profession, and maybe in government in general, for me it's the accidental profession.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't one of those things I aspired to be when I was 5 and 6. Hey, I want to grow up and be an assessor.
It's not in kindergarten thing.
No. No, and my dad, but I'm one of many in my family that either are currently or have been involved in assessing. There's a total like 6 of us.
Oh, so you're in the family line.
It's a family thing. My dad's retired assessor. I have 2 brothers, a sister-in-law, and a former wife that are all somehow involved in the assessing profession, or have been. And so when I was younger, my brothers and I, we all kind of fought my dad's, urgings to follow.
The next assessor in the family.
And so we had gone off and done different types of careers and venues, but eventually he won us over.
Well, you must enjoy it. It's something you enjoy.
You do. You have to. I mean, it's an interesting kind of work because it has a combination of both indoor work, where you have the analytical aspects of it, where there's a lot of thinking and mathematics, but then you also have the benefit of the field work, where you get out and see some of the properties across the city. You meet the different property owners and get to interact with them. And you do get to see some really unique and unusual properties, which is really kind of pleasant and enjoyable.
I bet there are some really unique and unusual ones around here. I mean, I'm new to the area, but but my wife and I, we like to go out driving. We like to go on what we call city trips, and we go out to different parts of the city. And I do it just because I enjoy it immensely. I also kind of learn more about the city. And I've seen some places in our city that's just extremely unique.
Yeah, we have some very unique homes in the city, architecturally speaking. We have some really unique businesses that have set up shop here. Now, of course, I don't value the business entity because we don't have that in New Hampshire, but the buildings themselves may be somewhat interesting. We have some interesting commercial type structures. I find it fascinating when I go and visit these things to gather our physical data or verify our physical data, and you're talking with an owner or manager of that facility, and when you start showing that interest in what they do, it's a whole different world, because now all of a sudden they're at ease. It's like, oh, the assessor's here. Oh
yeah, because it makes you nervous. That makes me nervous.
Yeah, I don't try not to make people nervous.
About the assessor coming, get your shotgun out here.
Yeah, I know. But you have to like what you do. You have to like people, because we have a high degree of involvement with the public. Either they're coming into our office, we're interacting with them on the phone, or we're at their houses in buildings. And so you have to have that comfort level in dealing with circumstances and people that just happen to arise. And it's not always the best of circumstances that we come across.
Well, tell me, how did, if I have my home, so I have my home, and I do, in Lebanon, so how do you go about evaluating, assessing my home? I mean, how do you figure that out? I'm not ever
Well, there's a series of steps that we're going to look at. The first thing we want to do is, for all properties in cities, we need to get an accurate inventory. So we're going to come out and make an appointment and meet you at your home and inventory your home. So we're looking at and verifying to the best we can the lot size. We're not going to survey it. We're relying on the homeowners or building owners to provide us with something, and a lot of times they just refer to the deed, and that's the best evidence that we have. But we'll inventory the land, and then we'll look at the structures on the land, whether they're outbuildings, and we'll size them up and look at the type of construction and the condition of the outbuildings. And then we'll look at your house, and we'll do the same thing. We'll get the exterior components and the measurements of the exterior. And then if you allow, as the homeowner, because you always have the right to say no, we'll ask for an interior inspection. And on the interior inspection, we're just looking at the sticks and bricks. People sometimes are concerned or alarmed that we may be looking at the interior components of their decorations or whatnot. And staff and I have looked at, over our course of our careers, tens of thousands, if not more, homes and buildings. And so we become blind to the decorations of the home.
So like if I go out and my wife likes to decorate the house, so she went out and bought some very expensive decorations, and my house is, she's got those things in there. That's not something.
No, because we don't value personal property. That would be considered personal property, and New Hampshire does not assess or value personal property. So I'm looking at your wall surfaces, like this here, the panels here, your floor coverings, the hardwood or carpet, your heating systems, your electrical systems, the plumbing. The overall condition of the house. If it's a home that's got 20 or 30 years or more on it, has it been maintained with what we would expect to see for other homes of that age and time period, or has it been, neglected? I hate to use the word, but hasn't been taken care of to the same standard that the public comes to anticipate. And so we gather that information, and then we bring that back to our office. So now we have our inventory. Now we have to put a value on that. So what do? Well, there's 3 primary values approaches that we'll look at. Not all are applicable to homes, but we consider them. The most common one that everybody is familiar with is comparable sales. We have a cost approach that we can use. If it's a brand new home, we can go to your builder or your developer and see if they would share that information with us, and that helps us to develop values for brand new homes. And then we have an income model, but that's really for like rental property. It really doesn't work for the single-family home too well. But we'll look at, say, the primary one would be the comparable sales. So we're going to say, oh, okay, Greg, here's your house, and we're going to now look throughout the city to see what do we have for sales of similar type homes to yours. Maybe look for the same type of age category and the same general wear and tear and condition, and that'll give us a range. We have a low and a high, and now we have to then set what we think would be an appropriate value for yours within that range. It's very scientific.
It seems like an art. It
is an art.
Very, very artful, but you're basing it on data.
You have to base it on something. I mean, an appraisal, whether it's you're having the bank come out and appraise it for a mortgage or a refinance on your house, and that appraiser comes out and sets a value, it's that person's opinion. So it's that person's art. And their opinion. And in our case, it's the city's opinion or our art in coming up. But it has to be based on something, and we try and be as reasonable as we can in interpreting the data that is left behind. So I always think of us as like the Sherlock Holmes.
So now how about my business? Oh, I have Greg listed as a business.
We're going to employ really the same types of techniques. The first thing we're going to do is take that physical inventory of what you have on on the ground. The lot size, and then the improvements on the lot. Business will be a little bit different because there'll be maybe additional improvements outside the building. You may have a large parking surface, so we'll look at maybe the area of paving. It may be perimeter fenced, so we may look at the fencing. It may have a parking lot lighting and exterior lighting, and we'll look and we'll assign values to those types of fixtures as well. The inside of the building, if it's a multi-story, you may have elevators, freight or passenger elevators. It's going to have a different kind of electrical service. It might be a 3-phase versus a home service. But the same thing, we're not going to be looking at the widgets that business produces or the items that you sell off your shelf.
So their inventory, they're diamonds.
Doesn't make a difference. And I know that some of the residents in the past have, kind of commented to me about, because there's so much activity going on certain sectors of the city, and why don't we have a higher value? Because there are a lot of cars and there's a lot of business activity. And if I could do it based on sales volume, I could, but then that would be a sales tax, and so I'm really limited to what I can get on the building.
Yeah, because we're talking property tax.
Property tax, yeah. And so I'm going to look at the same thing. If I have sales of commercial industrial property, perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing better than a sale. If I have some new construction, I can again go to that developer and say, what are the hard costs for putting up this big box retail center? The thing that we like to use frequently, but we have the most difficult time obtaining, is rental data. Now, the hard part is when we send out inventory questionnaires. It's a voluntary thing for New Hampshire. Querying our property owners for the rental income and expense data just on the real estate. And the misunderstanding is that they're thinking we're looking for their sales and their sales volume and their expenses, and we're not. What we're really interested in is what does this building rent on per square foot? What is your monthly rent or lease rate? And then what are your expenses associated with this building? Obviously in the studio here we have lighting,
Yeah.
You know, they'd be higher maybe than normal electrical costs.
Yeah.
You have building maintenance and repairs then too. You have roof repairs, you have all insurance costs, all these things, just so the expenses strictly associated with the real estate. And that narrows that down quite a bit. And we can analyze that, and so that way we can either look and say, oh, well, we have some sales of retail that is, again, our range, our low to a high.
Yeah.
We have our costs, perhaps, hopefully, and here's our low to high based on the type and quality of the construction. And now we have our rental and lease rates. Again, it would be based on location. I would think a better location would carry a higher
value
cost or lease rate per square foot versus a location that may be off the beaten path, a little bit more difficult to locate.
Yeah.
And so then we can use those three approaches and come up with the same kind of a value scenario.
And if anyone disagrees with evaluation, what's the path they're supposed to go down? Where do they go for the point of they receive their evaluation and they say, I don't think that's correct?
We do occasionally get those.
Yeah, I've heard that. I think that, you know, as 20 years as manager, there's been a lot of people concerned about their evaluation.
Sure, happens all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And I always say that there are two paths that a person can take. There is the formal path, which means that when you get your fall or December tax bill, you have until March the 1st of the following year. So we're in 2011, excuse me. So when everybody gets their December 2011 tax bill, they have until March the 1st of 2012 to file a formal complaint with the city. When you file a formal complaint, you're saying, I disagree with my value. And hopefully they'll provide me some material as to why. If they don't, then I'm going to ask them for some material. So I have an understanding of where did we go wrong.
Right.
The other approach that I take, because right now, if you disagreed with your value on your home, there's nothing you can really do until you get your December tax bill.
Okay.
For a formal approach. But I says there's an informal way. It's like you can always come to me, call me, or write me a little note or email. Email's a little more difficult because I get so many emails. I may not catch it as easily as I do a phone call or a letter. But I can go and say, Dave, I think my value is wrong. When you have a moment, could somebody come out and just take a look at my property?
Okay. Would you guys go out and look at
and we do
like
it. Yeah. I mean, we look at about 20% of the city in a given year.
Okay.
Through various means and methods. And if somebody says, could you just come and look at my house? And I'm like, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
You know, we'll come out there, we'll re-inventory it, make sure we have the measurements and the components right. And we'll come back and look at the data and say, based on our review of the inventory and the condition and this and that, well, now our opinion and value may be the same, but it may deviate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any trends that we're in our last couple of minutes now?
Wow.
Are there any trends that you see in your field and where things are going to go? Is it all going to be about the same as today, or is there any changes that you see that might be there on the
There's
horizon?
always a trend. When we get the sales from the registry on a regular basis, so we can look at the sales prices to the assessments to see if there are trends occurring. We did just update in 2010, and now we look at those trends to see if we need to modify some of our smaller market segments to see if there's a... But for the most part, in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a very slight downward shift, but it's only been about 1% or 2.
So it's
very, very minor compared to other parts of the state, New England, the country, where you've seen double-digit declines.
Yeah. So we haven't seen that much. Well, well, I think this. I really appreciate your time here, David, and I think that people can see from the work here how, you know, it's very professional, it's artful, it's thoughtful, and it's analytical, and I think you see that we're willing to listen. So
absolutely.
I want to thank you today.
Oh, thank you
very much.